An Air France plane carrying 228 people disappears over the Atlantic. We'll have the latest live. The Chancellor, Alistair Darling, says he'll repay some of the expenses he claimed on his London flat. Also today, exhausted Susan Boyle in a special clinic after her last performance on Britain's Got Talent. In sport, Blues boss Chelsea confirmed Carlo Ancelotti as their new manager. Now, Sacha Baron Cohen's latest escapade left Eminem wishing he could lose himself.
Live from the Sky News Centre, this is Sky News with Dermot Murnahan.
Good afternoon. The top story this lunchtime, an Air France passenger plane with 228 people on board is missing after disappearing from radar screens over the Atlantic Ocean. The twin-engined Airbus A330 was flying from Rio de Janeiro to Paris Charles de Gaulle when contact was lost off the Brazilian coast. Well, a search and rescue mission is now underway near the island of Fernando de Noronha. Joining us on the phone is David Gleave, an air safety investigator. Thanks for joining us, Mr. Gleave. Now, sources within Air France say they've lost all hope for the plane. Given the amount of time that has elapsed since last contact, is that the right position to take?
Yes, I think so. Rather than just a scheduled landing time in Paris, you would allow some extra time for the diversion fuel on board the aeroplane to be used up as well. So we've not heard from the aeroplane. We've not had any reports from any of the islands in the Atlantic that it's diverted there. So it may well be time to upgrade this to a full-scale accident alert.
There are some reports saying it was probably somewhere off the African coast, big place. I know. Is it usual for planes to disappear, so to speak, for a while as they pass from transponder to transponder?
It's not unknown for flight crews to have the wrong radio frequency or for radios to fail. But the crew would be making every effort that they could in order to communicate with air traffic control, or they may use a different radio system like VHF radio, which is like your standard FM radio in your car, but a slightly higher frequency. They can talk to other pilots using that if they're only in the local area. When they're out over the Atlantic, they have to use high-frequency radio, which has a very long range. And sometimes it's difficult to communicate using that, but you would have heard from the aeroplane by now.
Yeah, and reports saying it disappeared about 160 miles northeast of the Brazilian city of Natal. That puts it plonk in the middle of the Atlantic. This is a huge area for the search and rescue investigators to cover, isn't it?
Yes, the last position report will be used and the expected next position of the aeroplane. So you know the flight track as well will be filed with air traffic control. The aeroplane has satellite navigation systems, so it should really be sticking to that route. That will be the first one they try. There are emergency locator beacons on board the aeroplane which will activate if the aeroplane has an accident, and the same for the black boxes on board the aeroplane. You can locate those. The life rafts may also have emergency locator beacons on them as well. So it should be possible to locate the aeroplane at some point. If it's had a mid-air explosion after, for example, a terrorist bomb, then you may be having to look for the black boxes in 15,000 feet of water. So that may take a period of time before they can hone in on that wreckage. I think also by now, if the aeroplane had come down just off the Brazilian coast, we would have known about it from the locator beacons if it was going to be successful. And I think we just need to be a little bit careful when we say it lost radar contact. Well, radar doesn't work all the way across the Atlantic. It only
in the past, when these kinds of things have happened, they've set up a fairly elaborate center with numerous psychiatrists and assistants and aid the personnel to help the families get through what could be a very bad period. Like I say, there's no confirmation yet that the plane has gone down, but certainly it does look very grim, the idea that they've set up this crisis center and that President Sarkozy has ordered his ministers out to the airport. All indicate that in fact the plane has gone missing, but still no confirmation of that just yet. Manu?
All right, Jim, we also want to bring in CNN's Richard Quest, who is here with us now. Richard?
Jim, good morning to you. You were talking about the search area that from the French side that you're hearing about. Now, You mentioned, just remind me again, where you said that you believe the focus on the eastern side of the Atlantic, the search is taking place.
Actually, the western side of the Atlantic, it's northeast of the Brazilian city of Natal. It's about 180 miles off the coast. There is an island archipelago out in that area, and that is where they believe the last contact was had with the airplane, the last radar contact, when it just disappeared off the radar scopes without any kind of, as far as we know, without any kind of radio contact before it disappeared. So that's a fairly ominous sign as well. And as you know, Richard, I mean, with your experience flying and with the aviation industry, these transponders on these planes are pretty much something that never fail. And so that the idea that suddenly there would be a lack of radar coverage, a lack of radar sighting of the plane would be a pretty ominous sign. These things don't very often fail. It's possible, of course, that the transponder went down, but this late into the flight would now be like 2 hours.
Sure,
it would have. It's unlikely that the plane would still be in the air at this point.
Right, the plane would have arrived somewhere. Okay, Jim Bitterman in Paris. We thank you for that. Please, Jim, do come back to us when there's more on that side of the story from Paris to bring to us. Kieran Daly joins me now, the editor of Air Transport Intelligence.
Before heading out towards the Atlantic, presumably they do that for safety reasons, to stay over land. The estimate of where the airplane has disappeared from Brazil is said to be about 300 kilometres from the northeastern Brazilian city of Natal. That's the reports that we're getting here, but obviously it's very early stages and there's a lot of confusion. But the Brazilian Air Force has confirmed now that they have scrambled planes to begin a search.
And I don't know if you can clarify for us, Gary, much being made of this archipelago, Fernando de Noronha. Is it right that the Air Force has a base there and may have flown some way from there to start looking for the plane, rather than actually a suspicion that the plane has come down around those islands?
Yes, you're right to suggest that they have scrambled planes from there, rather than there was an immediate report that the plane might have disappeared in that area. I think it's more likely that it was further out to sea as well. So no, that is the location we believe that planes have been scrambled from.
And just as in Paris, there will be a lot of concerned friends and relatives in Rio de Janeiro. What is being put in place at the airport to support them?
Well, I think, Air France has been in the lead in coordinating help with relatives. There are a lot of Air France flights from Brazil to Paris and to Europe, so it's a very popular, and normally the flight is very busy. So, yes, I think the authorities in the airport will be making an immediate effort to reassure relatives and family and friends.
In terms of who may be on that flight, obviously from the UK perspective, we've just had half term. It's kind of holiday season. Is there anything similar going on in Brazil?
Well, it's not an immediate holiday period, but I mean the flights now between Brazil and Europe are normally very busy.
They've got a source at Charles de Gaulle from Air France, and their source says there is no hope. And there are reasons for that, and the reason is the distance. French media, most of it now, is reporting that they don't believe it came down off Fernando de Noronha. They think it was coming up as close to the African coast as it can get, and would have taken this route, probably come up through Spain and into Paris. They believe it disappeared off the radar screens somewhere around here, off the African coast. That's a huge area, probably 500 miles. It is an area notorious for not having radar cover. But even if you didn't have radar cover, if you lost one engine, you'd wire it in. If you lost two engines, you could still glide in. But the idea of losing two engines simultaneously and all communications, so you didn't tell anyone, that suggests, as your previous guest said, a catastrophic failure. You cannot rule out terrorism, because that would cause a catastrophic failure, but there is no reason to think that that's what it is. Looking at the search areas, apparently search areas are 500 miles long and 12 miles apart, 12 miles width. These are the corridors that they'll be having to search. That takes a long time. You're going to need several planes with which to do it. So the Brazilians will be out doing that. The French have scrambled. President Sarkozy has just said the state will do everything it can to locate this plane and to find out the reasons for its disappearance. They are probably, I don't know, but they're probably asking the Spanish because they're probably the most well